Okay, so I'm testing out this mic for the first time. I don't know how good the quality actually is, but uh, just bear with me. So, this project, I have learned so damn much from it. And I know this looks really bad, but don't worry. There's a reason why I do this stuff, right? I'm stopping the project. Look, the trigger point, let's start off with the trigger point. What was the trigger that made me decide to stop? Well, as you know, I was developing this game for the economics club, and it started getting to a point where it was getting boring, right? And I wasn't really enjoying the project anymore. It felt more like homework, and life obviously isn't all flowers and roses, right? And you're gonna have to do some of the grueling work. But that wasn't it. It wasn't fun because it felt like too massive of a project for me to do, right? This is economics. I have to learn, economics to do so, and code the entire game. And I was up for that, and I was actually fairly close to finishing. Or I was like halfway there, all right? Because I had to actually code the tax system. And the thing was that I was like, okay, well, this is for the economics club. I want this club to succeed, and this game would be a really great addition to it, right? And so the only real reason why I kept going, and I was planning on finishing it, was because I would be able to use it in the economics club. But then my tech teacher denied the club's request for some MacBooks, which we would use to run the game on. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to run the game because I'm using LWJGL, and all of the computers that our school uses are Intel chips, and LWJGL does not work on Intel chips because they deprecated it in macOS Mojave. Right? The only way to use it is to use the new Apple Silicon chips. But everybody in our grade only uses Intel chips. The grade below us and all of the grades below us, they get Apple Silicon chips. Right? So we had to ask, all right, can we borrow some Apple Silicon MacBooks? And they denied, which means we have no way to run the game, which means that there goes my only excuse for actually making this game. And I was working on it with my grandpa, which I had fun with. So I decided to shift. I'm like, okay, I gotta stop making this game because I wasn't making it because I was having fun, nor was I really learning anything anymore, right? The bulk of what I learn when making these projects is at the beginning. And I will be working out with my grandpa to learn other economic stuff and start setting up the club, but that's besides the point. Because when you look at all of the projects I've worked on and which ones I finished, right? The game engine. 2 games, Tranche Manager, that voice assistant, then the modular voice assistant. All of those projects, the majority of them, except for the 2 games that I finished. Actually, one of the games, okay, so the 2 games I finished, the first one, that was the first game I ever made. That was the first project I ever actually finished, or at least big project. That was a leaping point in terms of my learning, right? And I had fun because I was learning new stuff. It was really cool. But then the second game, I finished it because it was a multiplayer game. It was the first time I had figured out how to do a multiplayer system, and I was really enjoying that. That's why I finished that. I'm not sure if I actually showed you guys the finished product. I should one of these days. That will not be today. But yes, I did finish that, and I finished it because I was learning up until the very end on how to make a multiplayer system. And then the other one, modular, that was just, I was figuring out different systems, how to make things modular, right? Then the voice assistant, I was learning how voice libraries worked, stuff like that. What was the other one? Tranche Manager. I was learning web scraping. This was my first actual command prompt app, because all my other projects, I went straight to GUI. I went from learning syntax, to like a few like basic programs in the command prompt or in the terminal, but I kind of learned the terminal. I made terminal projects while I was doing learning syntax, and so I jumped straight to GUI stuff, and the tranche manager, which was the coding, or not the coding, the portfolio, the stocks thing. That was my first time learning how to web scrape. That was my first time really making files that loaded and saved information, right? And I was learning how to do stuff up until the very end. And it was a utility. That's the other thing. The majority of the projects that I have finished have been a utility, and all of the projects that I have not finished have been games, right? The utilities, things that people use, things that help people, things that make people more efficient at what they do, right? And I don't know, maybe that's some sort of thing that nags behind my mind when I'm making a game. It's like, this feels like a waste of time, right? I'm not learning anything, and I feel like I'm not making anything useful to anyone, despite people thinking that it might be fun or something. Still, it doesn't feel like I'm doing something meaningful. And as Jordan Peterson said, it's a moral obligation to do what you find meaningful. It's a luxury to do what you like. Anyways, yeah, so what am I going to be doing instead? Well, actually, before I get to that, let me talk about what I did learn from this and why I did keep going. Prior to me only having the excuse of the economics club. So originally, I learned so much, right? I didn't get to that. I learned how to work with the graphics card. That was a big one. I had never made a program that actually interacted with the graphics card, and it was hard work, right? I had a lot to learn. We did matrices, all that stuff, interactions with that, and so I learned how to work with the graphics card. I learned a lot of ray casting, that stuff. I learned how texture systems worked, right? Sprites versus textures. I already knew that, but like how to actually use light LWJGL. I learned what dirty flags were. I learned how the majority of application systems work in terms of graphics. I learned a ton of graphic systems. And then I learned other systems like how to save with GSON, GSON, where I save stuff in a .json file, right? And I learned how to load stuff, and then I learned a more advanced sound system, right? And then I also learned a more advanced key controls and mouse control system, and then I learned how, I had sprite renders and sprites and then sprite sheets. I learned how to do all of that efficiently, and then I learned how IMGUI worked, right? And that was a major breakthrough, because like I was struggling. I hated all of the other GUI APIs and libraries. They sucked. This one was great. IMGUI, that was great. I learned a lot from that, and I learned different structures to games, right? I finally evolved from that weird, constant multi-layered, from that very big multi-layered system of, just nesting more and more and more classes. And I learned how Unity does it, which apparently is more efficient. And I learned a little bit about how memory system works and how it works with code, and how that constant nesting of different object types was bad for the memory, right? And it was more efficient to do this component way, where I just have a component and multiple types of that component, and you would just attach components to a game object. Yeah. I learned how to make prefabs, shaders, that was a big one, shaders, serializers properly, all that stuff, render batches, all of that. And I will be transferring a lot of the knowledge that I learned from this, that I collected from this project, and I will be transferring it to the next project I am going to do, which I will tell you now. I'm redoing the tranche manager. Right, I checked it out a little bit a few days ago, and it didn't work. Half of the stocks I wanted to collect didn't work, and that's because I didn't use an actual web scraping API. Well, I did, but it wasn't one by Yahoo, and I was, well, scraping off of Yahoo. So what I want to do is actually use Yahoo's dedicated API. Yeah, well, actually, what I'm using is an API that's made for Java that interacts with Yahoo's API, because I don't think Yahoo made a specific web scraping API for Java specifically. They might have made it for a different language, but the API I'm using is basically interacting with one of those APIs, from what I can tell. And then I was thinking of adding a plugin feature to it. I was looking at, as you could see, I was looking at some concepts as to how plugins worked. I was thinking of using those. But yeah, and this one will be a Windows application. I will be using IMGUI. I will be using the sound system, all of the stuff I learned from this project and the projects before them. And I will finish that project, I promise. Alright. I already thought it through, because when I first started this project, I planned out, alright, this is the stuff I'm not going to like, this is the stuff I was going to like. I just laid out the whole new project that I'm going to do. All of it's stuff I like. So, yeah. Fingers crossed I finish it. So, yeah. See you guys. Stay tuned for those next videos. And I hope to make like an actual big video that's video edited. I have been saying that I want to video edit some of my videos. Haven't gotten to it, but this one, I will. See ya.